sonke isicelo sifaka umuntu omdala ngesonke bese ikomiti yahlangana yabona uma bevumelana tholakala inkabi bese ithintwa ngocingo yabona uthulitha unikeza inkabi imfanelo zayo uma isiqedile yakeza mama owaphatha amandla ukufa nokuphila ezandleni zakho ubone umphefumulo womuntu uhluka nenyama yakhe eqwaqa amehla abheka phezulu
umsebenzi womugcizo
Your shoelaces are done.
Sorry, shoelaces, young. Please, Sissy, I'm watching.
I don't want
it.
it.
Oh, Wally!
Friend, he was just trying to be helpful.
You're gonna have to go. What's wrong with your hand?
It's a kunomuntu la endlini na.
What do you mean?
Good morning, Cynthia.
Good morning,
You look beautiful today. Let me get you some breakfast.
Maybe an apple?
No,
Yeah, I think,
really,
yeah,
British,
fruits
I'm
in the morning.
okay.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Hey, Z! Oh, hey!
What are you going to do with my number?
I am going to call you.
Oh, you're such a romantic.
You're the one, yes.
I'm marry this girl.
Okay, ma. You know how I feel about marriage.
You don't deserve me.
1, 2, 3, 4. Baby, nikwenze njani na?
When balance me. Do you just walk around with rings in your pockets?
I've learned my lesson. I love you.
You can choose a man who actually makes you happy. You have options.
I promise you, love lives here.
diragalang ga o fetša bophelo ka moka o lelekisa torete manaba a gago a le morago ga gago pele o nagana toro ya gago e nyelele o tla dira eng Papa Marumo! Jovito! Jovito! Ewen, o tatala na.
Go.
Hi, I'm going to unmute myself. Welcome to Gauteng Film Commission's Day 3 of the various roundtables that they've been having to celebrate Women's Day and Women's Month. I want to stress that this is a roundtable, so it's a discussion with the ladies I'm about to introduce right now. So there's no master here. It's not a master class. We're all learning from each other. I definitely think I'm going to be learning a lot from the ladies who'll be sitting around this virtual table with me. As we try and talk about the issue of IP, which is intellectual property, and this very deep need to have it as a film producer, as a TV content maker. And so I'm going to go around the table, ladies, and I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves. I've got like 3 questions you need to answer in the introduction just to give us a brief overview of who you are, where you've been, where you're at now, and I'll start with myself. But my name is Lodi Matadela. I'm a producer currently at Puapa Productions. The things that I want to ask you, ladies, is like where you are at. So I am at Puapa Productions. Where you started in the industry, like how did this happen? Some people studied film and got into it. Some people came up from the bottom. You know, I started as a copywriter in advertising, and I decided I wanted to write a little more than the 7 words required for a billboard. And so I just started trying to find outlets for that. Could have been in glossies, could have been in film. I ended up in the hardest industry, I think. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is what capacities have you worked in the industry? Because right now, if you're a producer, you're obviously running your own little ship, and you are an owner, a company director, but what other roles have you done that people may not know? I worked as a script translator. Like I was, I don't even think my job had a title. I sat beside the director who didn't speak the language, which is not unusual in South Africa, of the actors that what the actors were speaking, and I was sort of helping. And it's weird because I don't necessarily speak Zulu, but it was a Zulu production, so that just says a lot about this industry. So I've got with me Snini Mati of Blengola, I've got Gugu Ngube Zuma of Stained Glass, and I've got Ketue Ngobo of Fusebox. Ketue, I'm gonna start with you. Give us a little tale of the beginning, the middle, and the end of your career in this industry thus far.
Okay, I'm what they call on the older end of things. I've been in the industry for nearly 30 years. I started off, I did my degree, and then I went in and was a trainee editor, and I trained as a film editor in proper film with the old-fashioned way of doing it. So I was a trainee on a trainee course, and I did that for 2 years. Then I became an editor, assistant editor, and I edited on a number of things. And then I decided to come home to South Africa. So I came back. I say I came back, but I'd never been here. So it's kind of an anomaly. So I came back, and I just started wanting to create my own content. And so I started off producing and creating stuff. And I worked for CDC. I worked for, went to work for the SABC, left the SABC, went to work somewhere else, and then I did some directing, and then I went back and started doing producing, and have really mainly done producing apart from an odd thing. Like I'm actually doing some directing now, on a personal documentary, and I'm running my company. I'm doing a lot of development because it's all about IP. So I'm doing a lot of development at the moment, and I'm also hiring myself out as a producer. So I'm doing quite a lot of things to make everything work and fit together. And we should be in production next year. For other things.
Fingers crossed for that, being in production during COVID. Google?
Yeah, but I think it's also understanding how to be in production for COVID.
Yes,
being geared up for all of that. I don't think we're going to be out of COVID for 2, 3, 4 years. Yeah. So if we're not in production, we're going to be hungry, peeps.
So Google, if you want me to repeat the questions, I will. Just where you are right now.
Yeah. Okay.
What jobs you've done in the industry that people might not know, because they assume you're born a producer, you just arrive and you're a producer, things that people don't know. And also, so where you are right now, what capacities you've worked in the industry. Just give us a short intro to yourself.
All right. Hi, everybody. Happy Women's Month to all of you guys and anybody watching. Yes, so I'm a producer currently and a co-owner of Stained Glass Productions. We do a few different shows, Uzalo being the flagship, and that's the one that's on every weeknight at 8:30.
The record-breaking.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We've done Ehostela, we've done If I Like It. We are currently in production for a new show that will be airing in October, and we are in development for 2 other shows that will be airing next year. So it is a very interesting time working during COVID, being in production, all of that. And I think there are a lot of challenges, but also ways to overcome them. And I think what we've found, maybe I'm going on a bit of a tangent, is just the need for content right now during COVID. I think it's become very clear that one of the things that sort of keeps us grounded, makes lockdowns work and more bearable, is entertainment and content. And obviously our consumption of that when we can't do other things. So it's been interesting. I think this industry has experienced COVID in a different way to a lot of others. And for us, it's meant more work, which has been great, but also more challenging ways of trying to figure out how to do it. I started off, I went to AFDA, Cape Town. Before that, I was at UCT doing an LLB, and then I quit that to go be an actress. So
and how did the parents react to
thrilled. That? I didn't tell my dad until I think the first semester of AFDA was done. And he was like, why didn't you tell me? I was like, because you would have said no, I couldn't go. And he was like, exactly. So he wasn't thrilled. My mom, I think the first time I told her, she was like, to be frank, she hung up. She was like, no, you're joking. She hung up. It took some convincing. But I think it's all worked out. I think our parents' generation and the people they knew in the arts, it never really seemed like a secure, route. So I think wanting the best for their kids, they were like, can't you just go and do something that will mean you can finally move out of the house at some point and we won't have to bury you. So that was their take on it. In terms of what I've done, I started off as an actress. I've done voiceover work. I've done acting work. I've been an intern. I went abroad to go work at a broadcaster called the Africa Channel in the States, where I did basically anything I needed to do and was called upon to do. I've been a marketer. I've done bits and bobs until producing finally took. I think I've been trying to produce ever since I left AFDA, but it's taken a while to get all the ducks in a row. And I think Uzalo was the first big producing gig that I got. So yeah, I hope that answers all the questions.
Yes, no, it does. And I don't think we can have this conversation without referring to COVID. It is the bigger theme and I guess the biggest obstacle that we're all facing as content creators in this space right now. So nobody is going off on a tangent when we talk about COVID. But Snini, can you give us a quick overview of where you started, where you are right now? I mean, Gugu just said basically she pulled that one over her parents, didn't tell them that she was with their money, I assume, or NSFAS money, who knows? And you are doing as you please. And but luckily it's paying off now. Can you tell us a bit about your journey as well?
Well, I started off as a journalist, funny enough. From there, I went to England, where I got my master's in filmmaking. And I came back in 2004, where I started off at word of mouth, funny enough, with the Dumagandlovu. So I was there, I think, for about 6 years as a production manager. You know, when you start in the industry and all that, funny, you know, when we came in, the industry was different from what it is now. So I started off there at Dumas, and then later went on, met Ketiwa as a commissioning editor. She was at on the other production we will not mention, where I was roped in to come and try and rescue the production, which was also, you know, going, you know how productions go. And then from there, I think, grew into line producing, because I think that was sort of challenging from what I was doing. So, you know, being a numbers person also, I line produced, I think, for 6 or 7 years before I moved to producing our own content, partnered with Bongiwe when we did the female filmmaker slate, where we did 25 short films for over 3 years for the NFVF. Where, you know, like the topic that we're discussing today, more of the ownership, I think we'll talk more of that when we get to it. And then still went back and forth with SABC commissions. We produced 5 seasons of Squeezers, which is on SABC 2, 2 seasons of Kibabuleletse, which was my own show. And we did a couple of licensed shows for SABC 3, namely The Honchos, The Divas of Josie, and at the moment we're currently working on an online show, but we are partnering with GFC to see if we can get it also as a licensed show on SABC 3, a show called Healing with Sophie and Gugu. We've been shooting it during the lockdown because it's really contained, studio-based show, more of, you know, like how the Red Table setup is, you know, yeah. So it's a show on healing, a show which looks at women, because at times we don't address some issues that, you know, my sister is going through, you know, and then we're all going through issues at the same time, but no one can reach out to the next person because we are thinking, oh, this one has got their own issues. Yet we are all, you know, going through issues. But if we are to come together, you'll realize that we can be able to lift each other up.
That's great. What I'm glad to hear is that everybody is busy during this time, which has been surprising because I think the assumption would be that the industry would grind to some sort of a halt. But I know for a fact that it was in film and television where people had to get back to work as soon as possible and were basically hitting the ground running and trying to figure out the protocol while actually working. So I'm just grateful to be able to have work for the company and other people around me. I just want to speak to those that have tuned in. Thank you so much for joining us. You are able to watch this roundtable live on the Gauteng Film Commission's Facebook page as well as the YouTube page as well. So either one of them, share, click, share, and get more people to join in the conversation. At the end of this roundtable, I am paying attention to all the questions or the comments being posted online. People should know that if you post a question, we might be able to answer it in the last segment of this roundtable. Again, it's not a masterclass. I'm just going to keep repeating that. We're just going to try and learn from each other and share what we do know, because I know I definitely don't know everything. I only know what I have been forced to experience dealing with the content that I've created and the various journeys that they've taken. What I learned from film school, which had never occurred to me, was that I am very much an independent filmmaker, because I think in South Africa, we seem to think we're working in some sort of studio system because we're working for the same people generally, but you are an independent filmmaker. And that change in my mindset allowed me to think of the very many possibilities. But those possibilities are not, you can't really enact them unless you own the content that you're working with. And that's the issue of intellectual property, and the ownership of it is what we'll be talking about. But understanding where we're working. So I just thought we'd just talk about context, really. And I want us to talk in a way where we are aware that there are those who don't understand the terms that when we began, we did not understand either. So as simple as possible. So I'm not looking for an academic paper on how it is the industry works or an intellectual discussion. Just make it simple so that everybody engaging gets to at least learn a little bit, which I think is the point of a roundtable. And one of the things I always do when I am asked to speak to on any platform is to start with the statement that this is not the US, this is not the States. We do not work like America. Nobody's trying to buy your script, option it. They can, but that's generally not how we're working. If you had listened to the producers speaking here, they all talked about how they're developing content themselves internally. And when you begin to just take ideas from out side. There are problems about originality or where the source or the concept may have come from. So it's a territory that we don't, because I get a lot of people saying, I've got a script, I want you to read it, or you literally delete those emails. I'm not reading anybody's scripts in case there are any issues. So what do you guys say about that? When I say this is not the US, I'm basically saying we don't have a studio system. We only really have about 3 networks or broadcasters that we're working with. We don't have guilds. There are very many, it seems, cons, but could also be pros about saying this is not the US. We work in a different way. How would you define the South African industry and how it's different from what people assume it is based on, I guess, if you're watching a masterclass, it's always in reference to how the US studio system works, whereas we're not there at all. So, Snini, you were just talking about the 25 films that you guys created for along with the NFVF. When I say this is not the US, how does that, what do you think that says to you? And how would you say to a person, a young person coming to you and saying, I want to do this, and this is not the US, this is not how we work. A lot of the work that you've created in the past, you can't say that you own, and a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, you know what, speaking of the commissions, how the South African system works, firstly, I worked on Squeezes from season 1 to season 5. We don't own any of that because we were commissioned by the SABC, meaning they own those shows. Just last month, Mary Twala passed away. We couldn't even have, like our own obituary. We couldn't edit anything for her because after every production, what do? You give them back every material. How sad is that? But now comes to your question of the slate. The slate was a different ballgame. We had writers who came on board, and also it was a development initiative. I'm not so sure if people know that. So we were training ladies who came on board. They pitched, the whole process. I will not get to the admin of that. And then NFVF, in partnership with Blingola Media, it was a training initiative. So what then happened is the producer, Bongiwe Selani, unfortunately she couldn't be here, but I'm here. So basically the production house then facilitates in looking for the funding, sourcing the good stories, sourcing the good directors for the story to be made. So as a producer, you need to find ways and means of finding the money. If your budget, for instance, is 2.5 to tell that short story or to tell that film, the onus is on the producer to go looking and knocking on the doors. But unfortunately in South Africa, you approach every company and then you sell them your idea. They don't quite believe in that concept. It's very hard, for people to believe in you and then say, okay, we're just going to give you 2.5. What do I get in it? And these are short films, for instance. So the mileage for short films is different than the mileage for long films. So the good thing with that,
especially if the objective is to train as well.
Yes. So with that one, the slate was the hardest, one of the hardest projects that we went through. Bongiwe Selani can attest to that. It was one of the hardest because also we had to make the ladies understand that, us as the producers, we are working on a development. We are getting all the money here. So in as much as you're coming in with your stories, you will get something at the back end. So you realize that some writers will not understand that. They want to own the property, but unfortunately the producer, the person who goes to look for the money, that person who will then own the concept.
Yes, I'm just gonna write, I'm taking notes so that we can talk. You just said back-end deal, and I'll ask any one of you guys to explore, to try and explain, because I can't say I understand back-end deals specifically in the context of South Africa. So, but we will talk about it later. But Gugu, when I say to people, this is not the US, and we're in the context of a conversation about intellectual property and the ownership of that, how would you interpret that statement?
Well, quite simply as a statement of fact, right? This isn't the US. Our system is very, very different. I think our opportunities are very, very different. I think it presents a lot of opportunities, but you do need to understand, and I guess what you're saying is that a lot of the time when we get trained, especially depending on where it is that you're getting trained or going to school, the model is the US, right? So then you have to adapt whatever it is that you've learned and try and put it into this context. Owning IP in this country, I've found to be exceedingly difficult. You need primarily and fundamentally, you need to have money in order to do that in South Africa. And I think particularly for Black women, that's a difficult one to get to. So being at a stage now where this is the first time that I can really consider doing stuff that we can own and license. And license would just be different from a commission in that I would still be able to own my IP and I can kind of sell it or sell the usage of it, for any for different periods to multiple different people, whereas a commission is one broadcaster, distributor, whoever buying the stuff, they own the IP and then they get to exploit it further. So, I mean, I haven't worked, look, I've worked for the last 13 years in the industry as a producer, about the last about 8 or 9. But to only at this stage be at a stage where I can even think of IP conversations just shows how different it is here. I've got no shortage of development work, no shortage of great ideas, no shortage of great stories, but in terms of being able to do it in a way that I can actually own it and exploit it further, you need to build up wealth really and money in order to be able to do that, and that takes time. And I think that's the real opportunity area, but also the difficulty, I think, with our particular model, particularly in TV. I think it's different in film, but I think it's the same challenges. But television is, because of the volume, just ends up being a lot more expensive than a once-off film. So if I'm trying to do a long running and I want to own that, I need to have between 50 and 80 million rand to be able to make it. What, where, how? It's almost impossible. So yeah, I think that's what it means to me to say we're not in America. It's harder to get to a point of owning your work and being able to exploit it yourself.
Ketue, you've worked in the UK as well, but also as an independent producer as well as a broadcaster. When we say it's not the US yet, or maybe it's not even the UK, what are those implications to people who are considering becoming content creators in this country?
I think that people think it's much more lucrative than it is. It's not the same when we're talking about the content game and how much it costs. When you hear $20 million for one film, that doesn't really ever happen in South Africa. We don't produce content at that price or at that scale. So when we're talking about being a producer and being a creative person, I think we have to start thinking about it at a much more, yes, it's got lucrative, there are opportunities when you, in certain kinds of content, for instance, long running has a great opportunity for you over time to be able to create wealth. Whereas if you're doing a 13-part series or you're doing a shorter series, it's very difficult to make those ends meet on our budgets, on South African budgets that are offered by broadcasters. They're very, very difficult. So you're kind of, I've been calling it, I decided to call it indentured labor, because that's what I felt I was in. I was in this game and I was making this content for someone, and then I would be exhausted at the end, and then they would ask for all these other things which I hadn't budgeted for at the beginning of the process, and they knew what the budget was, and then I had to still deliver on those things. So it was a huge amount of money. So having worked as a broadcaster, and I'm kind of working in that role again, I understand both sides of the coin, right? That as a broadcaster, you want the very best for your money and for your content, and you're like always going to be pushing a producer to deliver you as much as they can. As a producer, you're in the position of, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work. How do I make this work? It's not working. The sums aren't working. So it's a very difficult place to be. But what I think is, is that, we're talking. We just had Beyonce release her Black is King, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's absolutely true. Black is king now. Black is king at a global level, and we need to understand that. But IP is power. And if we understand that IP is power, and that if we own our content, we're able to strategically begin to decide how it's our gold. We have gold on this in South Africa, and really that gold didn't come to us as Africans. It didn't really come to us. We didn't get the receipt of the gold. But now we've got this gold, right? This is our gold. So we have to start gaining from it. And so if we look at what happened, and talk about the US, if we look at what happened 2 years ago, Fox News, or Fox, that whole Fox thing, which is the entertainment network, sold itself to Disney. Right? When they sold themselves, they weren't just, what were they selling? They were selling IP, intellectual property, which had been turned into content and which was being moved around as content. They sold that for $71 billion, which was the highest rate of exchange in the world at the time for any business. So when we understand that IP is worth 71 billion, we begin to understand that if we build brick by brick our own IP and are able to sell that IP, we are able to gain. So for me, when we're talking about IP, for me, it's been a fundamental fight. I've been arguing about IP if people have heard me, around copyright and our copyright amendment bill. If we don't get to own our IP and own our copyright, we're going to be in a terrible situation, because we're always going to be working for the man, working for someone who is not, who doesn't feed my children when I'm gone. Who doesn't reinvest into my lineage when I'm gone. So we're always working for somebody else, and we are there to work for them and create wealth for them, but not create wealth for ourselves. Yeah. So I'm really got into that whole thing that content is really important.
And that IP is power. I'm just going to go back to just make sure we're speaking in the same terms. And I'll ask you to follow on from that, Kethiwe. What is the difference, and in basic terms, what is the difference between a commission and a license program? Now, I say this because South Africa is really prolific when it comes to television content. And so I'm going to mostly speak to what, if there are people working in the industry, and I'm not referring to the island of Cape Town, I'm talking about generally everybody that's working in the industry. They're usually creating content for television. It is the one most sustainable industry when it comes to content creation here in South Africa. So if you can briefly explain what is the difference between a license deal and a commission, and then I want us to talk into ownership, like actual IP and the complete ownership or part ownership, the concept of that, since it doesn't really exist in South Africa.
So basically what's been happening is that in 1978, we had a copyright bill which said that whoever pays for content owns the rights to that content, right? So that copyright bill made sure that that the broadcasters who largely paid for the content own the content. So we would just hide in, I think, as an afterthought to make the content, and they would broadcast it. And so if you understand that distribution is the wealth creating game globally. It creates wealth. If you distribute things and you give people so that they have them, and you distribute to lots of, because we're 7 billion people. So when you distribute to that number of people, you begin to create wealth. So the distribution game is the game. So broadcasters are distributors of signal. They distribute the signal and they distribute the content. So if they commission you to make content, they're saying, paint a mural on my wall. Don't paint a painting, which you can take away with you. Paint a mural on my wall and it stays mine. And all you do is, in fact, you're going to bring the idea of what the mural will look like. You're going to find the colors. You're going to find the people who are going to paint it. You're going to find everything for me. And I'm going to give you 10% of what I say it costs. I say it costs. It's not what it really costs, what I say it costs. And then I'm going to give you 10% of that, and that is what you're going to earn. So
10% if you're lucky.
If you're lucky. It can be 6 to 10%, right?
Yeah.
So if they say that, they say they're going to make it up, they're going to own that content. So they set the price, right? And then you do the work.
So they're calling the shots.
Every single shot. They're calling, they are the masters, and we have been running around like hamsters, right? Because
that is a commission.
That's a commission, because we think that that's what's going to make us get to the big bucks, right? But it's not. That's the truth. It's going to make them get to the big bucks. If we look at what, like, God bless them, Mnet or MultiChoice, they are aggregators of content, and they distribute content, and then they commission us to do it. And if you see the difference between a commission for long form and short form, you'll see that actually we are being exploited so entirely and totally, it's not funny.
Okay, and then a license. What is a license?
So a license is, that painting I started to paint, right? But I didn't have enough material to finish painting it. I need someone to give me another color, right? So that I can put in the colors I want to put in, which I had imagined in the first place. But I just don't have enough material to make it. So that painting, which I can take and I can go and sell to this person, and I can even make a copy of that painting and I can sell to that person at the same time, as long as the contractual relationships are the right. So that painting is movable and I actually own it. And when I license it, they're giving me money so that I can finish the painting, but it's still mine. Okay, or the people on, so it's still the producer, whoever those producers are.
That's. I love the analogy of the painting. Snini, do you want to add to how we're differentiating between a commission and a license?
I think Ketwe just painted it plainly so. I was just adding on the fact that, you know what, they're saying paint on this wall, and they did the idea or the concept of what you want to paint on that wall is you, right? So you know in your head as a creative how you want this painting to be like. But they will bring in someone from outside who is not in your head, who is not a mind reader, and tell you, oh, okay, instead of putting that orange, why don't you put a yellow? Why don't you put that? And then that input from that person will be more money.
So and the process itself of not just taking your,
Yes, and then it will cost you money, and then they've told you this thing will cost you 10 rand, but now it's going to cost you 12 rand to go and paint it in yellow again. So whose responsibility then? It becomes
you make it work.
Yes, and now you can't bring in someone else and say, Ketua, please, can you come and give me the 12 rand? And because Ketua is going to say, oh, Snini, if I come and help you paint, I'm going to want my name on it. And then I can't put Ketua's name there because there's somebody who's giving me their name, the money, and they want their name everywhere. They don't want anybody's name there.
And Gugu, how if you were to, I'll come back to you, Ketua, if you were to then, using your own analogy or adding to Ketua's analogy, how would you define to somebody who doesn't understand what we're actually dealing with, the difference between a commission and a license? And the pros and cons
basically
thereof.
A commission, a broadcaster or distributor owns the license you own and are able to sell to whoever you want to. I think to just add to the analogy with the license, you're starting. Sometimes you can finish it and have a complete product that you don't need to help to finish, but you still have the opportunity to sell that to as many people as you want. Obviously, contracts notwithstanding, for as long as you want. Things get in vogue, they come out, they come back again. You can exploit it at every point. Whereas with the commission, they pay you once, 10% if you're lucky. You go, whatever they make after that is what they make after that. That's now none of your concern and none of your business. I think what makes it further, like more difficult is they not only say, come and paint on our wall, but you're saying, okay, painting is now my business. I've got good ideas about, what masterpieces I can make. It would make sense for me to buy a paintbrush. It would make sense for me to own some paint. It would make sense to me to have a ladder. Then they say, no, my sister. We can't.
Not on our dime.
You must go and rent a paintbrush. Yeah. You must go and rent a ladder. You must go and rent paint and pay obscene amounts for that don't make sense. The business can never move forward because you never own your own stuff. You must rent at this price. You must rent from these people. You cannot make economies of scale work. You cannot decide like, okay, I've got 3 projects. If I own my paintbrush and do this, that's more money for me. And also, a lot of the broadcasters, the more efficient you are, the better you can take their money, spend it, and deliver a quality product. The more they will punish you.
You'll be punished.
You get punished in this industry for efficiency.
On your next
you get punished in this industry for brilliance because they say, oh, you were able to make it at cost, whatever, the price minus 10% or whatever. So next time, we are not giving you 10%. We're taking that off. Instead of it being a reward, well done, you did a great job, keep it. Number one, if you save any money on a project, you give it back to the broadcaster. So you are not incentivized to work in any kind of efficient way that builds your capacity as a business. You are incentivized to spend every single cent, whether you need to or not. The model itself makes absolutely no sense. I believe it doesn't work for the broadcaster. I believe it doesn't work for producers. And interestingly enough, especially if you look at places like the UK, they will always say, like if you look at BBC, which is sort of the SABC counterpart in the UK, their content changed completely when they started giving producers their IP. They say that themselves. When they allowed producers to own the work got so much better because you are so incentivized as a producer to do the best. Right now, we're not incentivized for excellence. We're incentivized purely to deliver. Take as big as a percentage as you can. With long runners, unfortunately, it's closer to the 6 than the 10. But all the things that make business work, we are not incentivized for. We are incentivized, in the opposite direction. It makes no sense. That's the less diplomatic answer to what it means to not be in America.
Yeah. Just quickly, Smini, for those that didn't understand then what this difference is and why we may say there are pros and cons. The ladies basically just painted, if I'm following your analogy, Ketua, the picture as clearly as it can be painted about what we're really working with when we say this is not the US, this is not the States. These are the things that we are navigating in trying to hold on to a career, make a company run, get some profits back so that you can develop on your own and maybe even create that license deal. It's very hard right now. Snini, what did you want to add?
And also, when you are saying this is not the States, and also coming back to Katie's analogy and Google, the broadcaster, in as much as they'll give you the money, the time frame they will give you.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
The time frame they will give you. You don't want to go there. Because you as an artist, what or how long the masterpiece will take you. You know, at times it will take me 6 months maybe to write and develop. They will tell you, no, I'm giving you my money. So I want in 6 months to have shown 5 episodes. So now when you start looking, working backwards, say, no, but I would have wanted the 6 months to develop, to still do my research, to still run, to still do, you know, there will, you know, those timelines are not like the States. Because in the States, you hear of sitcoms that take 4 years in development.
That have 25 writers on them for one episode.
For one episode.
I know that you don't even...
So contract can get signed today, right? We are in August, and then they'll tell me, oh, by the 15th of September, please have delivered 3 episodes before you go on air.
And how much is that cost? They're not telling you how much that fast turnaround costs. And
it's not their problem.
No.
They're not interested.
It's actually not their problem because we sign those contracts, right?
Oh, yeah.
As independent producers, we make the decisions that we are going to go along with it, okay? And so once you've made that decision to go along with it, the broadcaster is going to take advantage of it. I'm talking from the broadcaster point of view because you've signed the contract. So what
the broadcaster
is, I'm not going to sign that contract.
But the broadcaster can. So this is one of the things I want to go into. And what you touched on, Gugu, when you said, when the BBC changed and they started giving some of the ownership, because it doesn't have to be complete ownership. This is what I want to put on our roundtable now, is does it have to be all or nothing? Can there be an ideal situation where there's part ownership? Because if there's investment from all parts, we are likely to all get a better product and a process out of the shows that we produce. So if we are, and I also, you guys must remind me, we just basically painted a very dire picture right now. We do have to go back and talk about why we would stay in an industry that does that to us, because it sounds like a very abusive relationship. And so now we have to justify why we love the person that we love or the industry that we love. But just hold on, Kitty. I want us to talk about, in the ideal world, say now we are working with broadcasters that would even consider sharing their IP. Is it all the IP that we want, or is it a shared IP? What is the ideal situation right now? And following on that conversation, I want us to talk, because I own some of the IP. I own IP, and I can tell you that's not necessarily easy either, because none of us sitting at this round table are distributors. We are content creators. Now, when you get the holy grail of this IP, what do you do with it? So the question I ask is, okay, we want the IP. Does it have to be all or nothing? Gugu, do you want to start? Does it have to be all or nothing? Is there a scenario where it is shared ownership?
Yeah, I think you have to look at everything. You have to look at shared ownership. You have to look at full IP. You also have to look at commissions. And having a landscape that has all of them and whatever makes sense at that particular time for the broadcaster or the distributor and the producer together, I think is what then you do. There's certain IP, to be frank, that I may not want. It may be more worthwhile for me to just get paid once, do the commission and move. There's a lot more that I would want to be part of, but I may not be able to bring money to the table. So if you're bringing money and I'm bringing the idea and the ability to deliver it, then let's, have that as a co-ownership situation. If I get to the stage where I don't need your money to make content, I just need your platform, then I'm not interested even in a co-ownership at that point. Like, let me own my thing completely and give it to you. You can use it and exploit it for a limited period, pay for that, and I can take it and move on. I think the industry will work when we have all options on the table. And it then comes as like each case, it's like a case by case basis of what actually works in this particular scenario.
Yeah. Snini, being you were talking very briefly about the back end deal with some of the filmmakers that you guys had for the NVF slate. Co-ownership, you guys are holding on to the IP or they own the IP. What is the best scenario? What is it that a producer like yourself would be looking for?
You know what? We spoke earlier on about distribution. So in terms of ownership, I think it depends what I'm bringing to the table and what I will do and what they will then do. Because you know what? We are producers. So at times distribution, I might not understand how it works. Marketing, I might not understand how it works. So it depends what they bring to the table, and then we can share whatever remains of that pie. And also, actually don't want to speak in terms of numbers or which broadcaster, but they will say they'll own your, if they commission, they own it forever. But then now
in perpetuity in every
Don't
universe.
say it, Google, perpetuity.
In all the universe. Even on Mars, they own it.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and then they own it. But then like Mnet now is talking about your 10 years, you know, and then we have people like DTI and GFC who are now standing with us and saying, okay, we'll find you guys if you own. So it depends with the project. If it's a film, as a producer, it's okay to own it for, you know, to own it and hold on to your IP. But then also when we spoke about the back end deal is because I, as a producer, might not be a writer. So I find Ketio, who is a writer, the story is her story. So I go to Ketio, or Ketio comes to me as a producer to say, I've got a story like this, Nini, please produce it for me. But who's gonna look for the money? If Nini is gonna go look for the money, so which means I'll own it. Those are like the rights that I'll then take from Ketio and then say, Ketio, I've looked for 10 million rands, we're gonna do the film. So at the end, I think I'll give Ketio as a writer a percentage at the end. When we sell this product, we make money out of it. Ketio, I'm like, okay, thank you, Ketio, for your idea. Here's your 5% at the end of selling everything.
Ketio? Google dropped the bomb in perpetuity. We're talking about ownership, part, full ownership. What is the ideal?
I think the ideal, I think the cost of making content is enormous. Okay, so the cost of making content means that it's very difficult for one, even rich countries are finding that collaboration is a much better way of making content. So collaboration, I think, is a very important way forward. And I think that if we can collaborate, and that collaboration can be with a platform owner, and sometimes you say to them, listen, I'm going to bring you the product which we're going to make only after you've given me the money. So that's your pre-sale, right? So you can pre-sale that content to them and they'll give you the money to help make it so that they can get it. So that's a great way to operate. There's also a co-producer who might have money in their country, and they come to you and say, listen, we've got money. Have you got money? You've got a bit of money. Listen, let's come together and make this thing work for all of us, okay? So they put the money together, and that's a co-production. So, and then you can have a distributor, and they say, okay, we really believe in this content. We're going to give you a minimum guarantee amount which we're going to be able to sell your content for. So that's MG. So they give you that amount in advance because they know they're going to be able to sell your content for blah, 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 blah amount. And they also make blah, 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 blah. They don't tell you the truth either. So you got to be careful. Anyway, so there's that, so that you've got MGs, you've got pre-sales, you've got co-producers, so that all these people who can partner with you to make the content. And then there are also things which are like soft grants, which means you don't have to pay those monies back. So for instance, if you look at, you are supposed to pay KZN back, and you are supposed to pay the NFBF, but they're generally perceived as soft grants, right? So those are not really refundable grants, but let's say you make a lot of money, they want their money back.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how they operate. So now if you put all those partners together, suddenly you're able to make something that makes sense. You're able to make content that has reach, you know, because our content really can't go beyond our borders because it is made at the lowest possible cost with the, you know, we suffer as producers, but it's lowest cost, And really, when we think about the way in which content is being made globally and the way in which they're positioning it, we need more money. So the more we make it for, the more we can possibly get for it when we start to sell it with a distributor. But you've also got to watch them because they've got their own tricks as well.
Yeah. The scenario that you're painting, Ketiwe, is great. Is ideal that's how it could work if you were to able to get those funders, deliver on the project and actually make money off it. Now, say we are living in this ideal world where we own our IP. We own the intellectual property. You've got your pre-sale license, minimum guarantee, whatever. You've got it. You've got the various funders. Some of it is grants. Some of it is a bank like the IDC. You must pay it back with interest. All those little things. How do you proceed? You're not a distributor. You're a content creator. You're still developing other shows. You're still doing all those other things. How do you even know how to exploit work that you own in its entirety? And I mean all the way down to the characters on the show, some of them which could have spin-offs, or I mean the list is endless about how exactly we can exploit content. But we are in South Africa where nobody owns the IP, right? We're talking about that. Now, say you get the Holy Grail. Where to from there? You're not the distributor. You're not in an industry that works on how to exploit content that is owned not just by the SABC, but a producer that comes to you. They say they own that character from that record-breaking show, and they want to just use it. You can use it in your ad. Oh my God, like what do you? Oh, we don't know what to do. This I'm talking about from experience now. Dealing with content elements within a show that can be exploited in every which way. The reason why the US becomes a model that we always refer to is because while they dominate the globe. So if 60% and probably more of their revenue comes from outside of the US, then they are getting their money from outside. It's not even America. We are contributing to the revenue of Hollywood. Hollywood decides Despicable Me is coming out and they're selling their little minions on at McDonald's. I have an animated film that comes out. I own the IP. We happen to have used Ster-Kinekor as well. How do I possibly begin to jump on that revenue stream that Disney is making so much money from? And this is not even the tickets to watch the film. This is afterwards. How do I get my little toy in the Happy Meal to exploit the film? What avenues are available in South Africa to assist me as a content creator to do that? So we are talking now about private money that doesn't understand how to exploit content that we've created in South Africa. We're talking about revenue streams that are not even open to us yet because they're being monopolized by the biggest industry in the world right now. How do we begin to engage in that process as well? And now I'm talking about the how and also the what could be. Like if we are sitting here at the round table, how do you think everybody, be it private money, SABC as well, in understanding that they have an opportunity to make money in this sense, how else could the industry work in this scenario? So Ketiwe, you look like you were very eager to add this.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that we have failed to we don't have our system. We don't have a value chain, right? And we don't have a proper value chain in that other businesses work with us. In the entertainment industry in the US, they have lawyers. Abani, they have lawyers who do their contracts, right? And they have lawyers who read before they sign their contract. So once we have this contractual relationship, it is very binding. So if we understand how to manage rights, right? So we talked about IP. IP is your rights.
And we talk about back end, yeah.
Yes. And that's your rights. How do you manage those rights? and that is contractual. If we get that thing right, and if we begin to work with IP lawyers, there's some brilliant young IP lawyers who work in the entertainment industry that I've discovered, and they're excellent. So we must start to become an industry and not, you know, I mean, I'm currently working largely on my own, but I'm intending to work broader, but we need to work broader. And we need to create a proper industry which has full reach, because we as producers currently do everything.
We do everything. And unfortunately, that's the problem.
And we're not experts at everything. Therefore, we sign things that put us in jeopardy. We're not able to read a contract adequately, and we've signed. And then we realize after we've started to go that we've made a mistake. So, and it's a very difficult process. So we need to be working with legal people. But you know that they charge us, and you know they don't do the thing that we want them to do. Listen, we'll pay you later. We'll pay you afterwards. They don't do that game because they value their work. So we have to find ways of working with lawyers, and maybe we say we work in groups so that we can have these people. I don't know how it's work. I'm just riffing, but work in groups so that we can hire a lawyer and say we want 30 hours of your time this month, and we all
I hear you on the lawyer part, Ketiwe, and that's fine. You can engage a lawyer, but if you were talking just now that there aren't actually any avenues that have been set up for once that lawyer has sat down and created a contract where all the minute details of the back-end deals isn't how do we exploit this IP, what those exploitations are going to mean in terms of what you get back. We don't have those avenues. So if we're sitting here, and let me ask an honest question amongst all of us here. Who have got a property that you own the complete rights of and have tried to sell and exploit, and have you succeeded? I mean, I can start with me about Jovijo, which was a license deal with the SABC. We own every single element on that show. And it has been a problem in trying to exploit it in every which way that we can. Whether we're doing it on mobile, whether we're doing spin-offs, whether we're getting people to come on board to exploit the world in which the story takes place in, the various brands that can participate, the streaming deals that I have been given, I would not want to share. It's not even a percentage, it's a fraction of a percentage of what it cost to make that show. So as we're busy fighting for IP now, are we also fighting for what we want to do with it afterwards? Do we have, beyond the lawyers, enough people that understand the various revenue streams that we're always talking about that we can exploit in order for everybody? If you have your lead acting for free because they have a back-end deal with you to make sure that there's actually revenue that you will make. And not just, I mean, profit, making a profit. Any one of you, Gugu, Snini, Ketiwe, I'll give you a chance, no, but I want to know from the other producers, if you have owned the content, what have you done with it? And has there been any actual returns on the investment that Ketiwe was talking about, where you give your entire self, blood, sweat, tears, everything?
Okay, look at
the reality.
Yeah, look at the slate. When we did the filmmaker slate, we did 25 short films. Hopefully this is okay with Bongi for me to share this. Blingola Media, Bing Bongi Selane, we own this, right? You take it to a broadcaster. For instance, let's just say we made one film, let's just put a figure to it. We made one film, for instance, at 100,000. And then now when you're licensing, they'll want to give you a fraction of what you paid for it. For instance, I'll speak to SABC3, for instance. You will shoot a show for 1.2 million. They would want to license it for 300,000. And you as a producer, you would have pulled in a lot of resources to make that show at 1.2 million. And now you're being given 300,000, for instance, who makes up the difference? So yes, we can own the properties, but what do we do with them? We can own them, yes. We've got 25 short films. What do we do with them? Because would you want to sell your product, which is an A class, and then, sell it for nothing? No, you wouldn't want to do that. So we also still need that platform where we say, you know what, if you own your product, this is where you take it to. Then it speaks to distribution. It speaks to all the other broadcasts. It speaks to marketing. And unfortunately, as producers, it's something that we never put into consideration. Exploiting other markets, bringing in a producer. I understand, Ketu, when you say you need to bring in lawyers, but we also need to bring in people whose job is to check what other markets are doing. Because we never do that. We never check how other markets. I'll be so invested in my product. I'll be so invested in raising my own money. I want to see this project see light of day and all that. Now, I don't know how marketing works. I don't know how distribution works. So we also need to take note of all those elements. How does distribute? And is there a law also that says that if I've shot something for 5 million, does the broadcaster have a capping fee that they can buy my product for? Because then it's useless for me to own something which is worth nothing.
Google. Yeah, look, I want to ask a very difficult question. I know I'm supposed to be answering, but I do feel that if we are really honest with ourselves as producers, have we really understood the business model of production? Be it film, be it television, be it like online stuff. I do find, particularly in South Africa, that we struggle with the actual model, with the actual business case of what we do. So we are in this weird position where we have products a lot of the time that actually don't make for a good business case. But then we still want and expect the perks of business. And those who went to business school and know a lot more than me and whatever, the markets themselves decide when it comes to products. And if we are creating products and creating them in a way and distributing them in a way that works, then we're not going to go and have to beg for money, because the returns speak for themselves. An investment needs to be an investment, right? If I'm going to somebody, a businessman, and I'm saying, invest in this film or this idea, it can't be from a place of the goodness of their heart or because the story, it needs to be from a place of, I'm going to make my money back, and I'm going to make it back in ways that are better than if I had put my money elsewhere. And I don't know that we're there yet in terms of producing. I mean, even just like box office, like we put a lot of stock in box office in South Africa, which confuses me to no end, because we don't have a movie going population by and large. But we want our model to be like, we want to like fix it into models of other countries that work for other countries.
Yes.
In South Africa, we watch a lot more television, for example. We buy DVDs and watch them at home. We do things in a different way, but we are so stuck in models that don't work, that the business case itself doesn't work. Then the exploitation of a product that that isn't really working then does become difficult, because we haven't really understood the business. Is this the right place to take this particular show? Is this the right place? Have I developed this show in the, and we're sort of like hobbling between or like these two worlds where we're in South Africa, we're in that context, we have our audience here. I think a lot of the time we disrespect our audience and we don't take our audience seriously. We're using them as a stepping stone to get out to be taken seriously by America or the UK or whatever the case is. So our products also can be a little schizophrenic, because they're South African, but they have, a different appeal that Americans are also doing, and they're doing better. So they're not necessarily going to want to buy, but then it kind of tastes weird in a South African's mouth because we didn't do it with them in mind. So I think we also just need to have a come to Jesus for our own selves about this business of production. Yes, we're good ideas. Yes, we're good creatives. Yes, we're good content people. But have we really understood the business of production? And I'm not sure we have.
I have to say, sitting at this round table, I can say every single one of these people here have actually interrogated that. And I want you guys to respond, because Gugu said a lot right now. For instance, the idea that we are not a cinema-going nation, when there are very many reasons why we can say why the general South African population is not going to the cinema. That we don't watch movies would be something else altogether. But cinema,
we watch movies. We love movies.
Yeah, we watch movies, but cinema and the various platforms, the two platforms that we have in a country this small where the monopolies run, it would be hard to say, well, this doesn't work if Ster-Kinekor is only going to continue to program the kind of films that it does and charge them at the price that it does. So it's very much a part of the Hollywood model. That makes it hard to then say, how do we begin to exploit the shows that we have or the content that we've created? If Snini's shows, films were shown in like a marathon, one weekend at these various platforms for a particular price, I'm sure it would be able to draw an audience, but we are not in an industry that would be open to every alternative that we might have in engaging our audience in a most authentic way. So if we insist on looking, when the reason why I premise everything with this is not the US, okay? Nobody has $14, $15, 200 rands for a ticket and a little box of popcorn and whatever else you're getting to go watch in a love seat at New Metro. Nobody has that, especially now in the, what is it? What do they call this? A double recession. It's COVID. We don't even want to go into those details. Nobody has got that money. But that does not mean we don't engage they don't engage with the content that we create for them. When it touches, when they can say, that is me,
when they can access it.
Me. Yes, when they can access it. And I don't want to sit in another workshop with another person from another country to teach me about how to deal with this industry when this country as an audience has never been taken seriously. Never been taken seriously. What the Indians understand is that they are who they are, and this is how they watch films. They're going to watch it for an hour and a half, they're going to break, and they're going to come back for another hour and a half. If everybody says a film needs to be 75 minutes, people can't watch longer than that. That's not true. Everybody comes from a different culture. And so you said so much that I'm like, there's so much intrinsically wrong with us and how we view ourselves that of course impacts the industry and then impacts how we create content. Ketue, please don't mute yourself. You are very much a part of this round table. We are now just talking.
I was muting because there's family.
There's stuff. There's life. We're living and working in the same spaces. Yes. Yeah. We've got. I'm gonna give us another 20 minutes. And I saw some questions there. Gugu, you just said so much, and it's hard to go ahead, Ketue.
Can I just talk about the distribution? I mean, I think the trouble with distribution is that we have this expectation that one person is going to pay for the cost of what it costs, right? Yeah. But when you think about the person who invented toothpaste or the person who makes toothpaste, they invest in R&D and develop it and produce it, but then they sell that little bits of toothpaste to lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of different people, and that's how they make their money. So if you think about what you're saying is that we want one broadcaster to pay for the total cost when they're only going to show it this much. So we have to understand that distribution is the game of having is the game of being able to deliver to many places at once, and that's how you get your money. So all the different cinemas that a film will go to will create the revenue, not one single person sitting in one cinema. So we've got to understand that when we sell it to a platform, our contract regime has to be the right regime when we sell it to them. So if we're going to sell it to a streamer, that streamer is going to say, I want to sell it globally. You cannot accept the price for a local content. Yeah. You have to say, I'm going to walk away. What's her name? She walked away. Nicola Cole. She walked away from a R1 million deal from Netflix because she said, that's not going to work for me. So we've got to be able to decide what's our bottom line in the distribution game. But we've also got to understand what the other side of the picture is. They're not going to pay for the full content if they're not participating in its revenue, right? Absolutely. So you're the revenue. So you've got to be able to see how that works. So you're not going to get as much as you want from each broadcaster. You're going to have to say, I need to sell it to 25 broadcasters for me to make my money. But that's why distributors came in. They sell, all they do every day, all day, before they go to bed, after they go to bed, is sell content to different broadcasters. So those distributors know how much they're selling it for, what they're taking off the top, how much they're saying your P&A is, they put a charge for all sorts of things as you're distributing it. You've got to understand, it's very difficult to pin them down because they've got it to a fine art. But the distributors are a group. Their business model is sinking very, very fast. A lot of distributors don't know what they're going to be doing in the next 10 years. At the moment in Africa, we're kind of cool, but in the rest of the world, the distribution model is falling apart very rapidly. So we've got to say, largely because of the streamers, because the streamers say, I want a global deal. I want this for the world. I'm not having it for a territory, it's for the world. So streamers mustn't come here and start paying us like we were being paid by the SABC, because now that content is streaming globally. So we've got to be able to but then, they've got all sorts of ways of cutting that deal.
Yeah, it's, I think just from everything that everybody has said at the table right now is that there's a lot of things that are fundamentally wrong about how the industry operates, right? And we know that it's not working because how it affects us as content creators and the pressure that we're put under with the smaller and smaller budgets that we're getting for the rights. And when I say right, or rather the platforms that wherever you sell it or you're commissioned to, they want to exploit it in perpetuity, and they're going to exploit it every which way that they can. And so it's hard to just say it's the one thing. As we're nearing the end of our conversation, I want you guys to think about a statement about how you can see things getting better and what it will take for things to get better. But before we get there, I want to ask, why be in an industry that is this difficult to navigate? Why be in an industry that takes your painting, or it forces you to paint on walls you don't want to paint on, and not allow you to paint on your own canvas and then move it from gallery to gallery? Why be here? Why are we still here? Ketiwe, I'll start with you.
I've been here the longest around this table. You know what? I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to do anything else. And I tell my children that, which is a very sad thing. Okay, I don't know how to do anything else, but I love telling stories. I love what it means to communicate the essence of life to other people from somebody else's perspective. I love that. I think there is nothing that would sustain me more. But I also don't know what else to do. I know how to tell stories. I love telling stories. I love finding stories. I love working with creative people, as crazy as they are often. I love the way in which they think. I love the way in which I can try and pull things out of them. And I love the way in which they push back. I love all of those dynamics of creating stuff. So that's why I'm in it. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know what else to do, people. I think
why?
There is an answer, is that I'm trying to find, I grew up, I didn't grow up in South Africa. I'm trying to find connections internationally, because when we think, one of the reasons why we have a problem selling our content here is because we've only got 50 million people.
Yeah.
But when you think about how
7
many
billion.
Black people there are on the globe, we are close to 3 billion. You know?
We are.
When we start to look at the numbers game and to say we're not America, it doesn't matter if we're America. Are we telling stories that touch other people? So if our stories touch other people at a global level, we're going to be able to get a much broader audience. We're going to be able to sell it to more people. The streamers are going to value us more, and they're going to give us more money. So we've got to start to think of ourselves as global people. This notion that we are just South Africa or we're just Nigerians have never really thought that.
Yeah.
It's just us who live in here. We think that we've got to start being global in terms of the audience, because all these people suffer from the same things that we've suffered from: oppression.
I mean,
at different levels and different ways.
But it's all
I
the
would
same.
beg to differ. I think, as much as Africa is not a country, Nigeria is not Africa either. They are not the definition of the country.
Their own culture, those.
Yeah, they understand themselves very clearly. Google, why are you still here? Why are you making film? Why are you in this toxic relationship?
Look, man, I think we did spend a lot of time speaking about the challenges and all of that. And obviously, if we're talking about IP and you're talking to a group of Black women, then more of the challenges will emerge than the victories and how this can look. I'm here because I have to be here. I want to be here. I love telling stories. There's nothing else I want to do. I think I could do other things. I just don't want to. Like, I want to spend my days telling stories and exploring humanity and like exploring what it is to be a person in the world, a South African, and in the world and all of that. I think there's such a place for storytelling. I think we don't use it enough. We don't exploit it enough. I think from the history that we've come out of and everything we're grappling with, I mean, you look like around and you just see the battle scars of everything we've gone through, the oppression, apartheid. I don't think we did a great job sort of coming through it and handling it. We're not a therapy going nation, but I think television, I think stories, I think movies, I think books, I think music all have a part to play in just healing us, in just seeing ourselves reflected, our issues reflected, seeing them solved, at a distance, but also close enough that you can understand, put yourself in that position, learn something, just be entertained, just forget something. I think it's like, I don't take it lightly. It's a high honor to be invited into South Africans' homes for half an hour, for them to say, give you their time, their eyes, their hearts, open themselves up to something you have to say and a story that you want to tell. And I think it's amazing. It's amazing. I think there's a way in which our history can be documented ourselves. We can find pride in who we are and whatever through stories. I really feel like storytelling is the highest sort of form of art and humanity that we are capable of. And so the more we invest in it, I think the better and the healthier we are. I think Ben Okri is the one who says a nation's only as healthy as the stories it tells itself. And I think we have such an opportunity. I think as toxic as some elements are, I'm sitting here, I'm 35 years old. I run my own production company. I've been able to make a record-breaking show in South Africa and make a living and whatever. Those are all opportunities that any other Black woman, generations before me couldn't have dreamt of. So as much as there's a lot of challenges, there's also a lot of opportunity. I'm an eternal optimist. I'm always hopeful. As much as we can see what other countries are doing and how they've managed to monetize their industry and the great leaps that they've been able to do, I've got hope that we'll get there as well. And I want to be like in the front lines when that happens, to be able to start making really good money off of this and doing whatever. But I've got hope that it's going to change. I don't think it's going to stay the same. I think what we've been seeing has been changed, and it keeps coming and it keeps going. It may be too slow, it may be frustrating for us, but it's there and it's coming. And I think we have something so special as South Africans to offer the world. I think the more that we look at ourselves, the more we tell our own stories, the more that we, produce our own music and do whatever, I think the world wants that. And the more specific we are to ourselves, the more we tell our adulterated stories, the more appeal we're going to find in the world. You spoke about the Indian example, the Nigerian example. They are completely themselves, not trying to be anybody else. And we love it. The world loves it. We eat it up, So I think there's an opportunity for South Africans to do that. There's been times in history where musicians died poor, We're at a time where a lot of the time, if you look at America specifically, but even other parts of the world, musicians are making money. They're able to see their work and whatever translates. I believe that's going to happen for our industry too. I really do. So that's why I'm still here.
I don't know if you can try and follow that. Why are you still here?
Oh my God, how do I follow up? Google, yeah. I love this industry. Hey, 16 years this year. We've created some great content. It's like when you have like a chef, when they've put together like a good meal with all these ingredients, and then they're looking at that meal with admiration. So that's how, for me, when I watch people watch our content, as Gugu is saying, their show Uzalo is like out there. For me, I hear people talk about Squeeze as my old ladies. We went through a training process for the young ladies with the female filmmaker slate. You know what? As Bonyo will say, enabler of dreams. Being able to do something for other people, being able to be that voice of those people that can't. And for us producers, being able to facilitate for those storytellers. I'm not a real content, but I'm a producer. So for me to be able to go to someone and say, you've got this story to tell, let me make it happen for you. And as a producer, when you sit in that cinema and you're watching that story and you be like, for once you're breathing. You know what, there's nothing as fulfilling as that. I think it's like a mother when they're expecting and then the child is coming, the child is finally put on your chest. For me, each project is like that. I forget all the pain, I forget all the tears, because it's not easy. Yeah. All the producers on this platform can tell you that, you know what, the pain of producing any production it's not easy, it's painful. Yeah, like we cry real tears. But like now at the end, when they give you that baby, which is your project or your film or whatever it is, like everything else, it just goes out of the way. So I'm still here for the long haul. We'll change the narrative. It's a work in progress. You know what? We can't expect the channels to say, like the saying goes, whoever pays what does it say? Whoever pays the piper detects a tune, or something like that. So that's how the channels have been looking at it, to say, I am paying you, so I'll detect how I want it. But the good thing is, with such platforms, we can sit and say, let's come around the table. I still want to own some of my content or most of it. How can we work together? Because I can own the content, and what do I do with it? Because I can own so many 10 shows, but if I don't have a platform to sell them, what good are they?
There's no point. It's collaboration, like Katie said earlier. So I don't know if those that have been joining us, we've got the last half hour of our round table. Please send in your questions. I'm going to be, I have noted a few here, and I'm going to be asking the ladies at the round table. Don't forget, ladies, I just want a statement about what you would like to see change in order for us to get to a place where owning your IP is something that is worth having in this industry. So I've got a question here, and Gugu, I'll pose it to you because the person had asked about stained glass in particular. But does your company offer mentorship to other smaller production houses, or any type of mentorship in the projects that you are busy with?
Yes, in fact, we do. It just depends on when you meet and sort of the stars align and that kind of thing. But it's not something we're close to. I think it's something that we're very passionate about. we were mentored when we first started, and we saw a huge amount of value in that. So if we have the opportunity to do that for others, then we definitely will. We've worked with other people like writers, producers before in terms of developing their ideas in a kind of co-production kind of way. And we're currently working with a mentorship relationship with a project that will start airing in March next year. So as time goes, we'll be able to say more about that. But that is also a mentorship relationship that we're in with a smaller company. That we have that relationship with. So yeah, we're definitely open to that.
Great. I'm sorry, I'm not. I didn't get the name of the person that asked the question, but it was one of the questions in the comment section. Snini, I thought this would be great for you. What advice do you have for younger producers about to enter this toxic relationship industry? What advice would you have for them? And I think you spoke to it when you're talking about why you were still in the industry as well.
You know what? They need to manage their expectations. I think we come in this industry not to make money, but people look at it and then they think, oh God, I'm going to be a producer. This is going to be so easy. I'm going to have my own shows. I'm going to make so much money. No. We are not in here to make money. We are here to tell stories. So we do mentor a lot of young girls that we try and manage their expectations to say, you know what, it's about telling stories first and foremost, because in South Africa, we haven't learned the model of making money. Like Gugu was talking about Americans making big monies in music and all that. In South Africa, we are not there yet where one project can give you 20 million in profits. No, we're very far from that. Here, it's about telling your stories and getting your name out there and learning as much of the industry as you can, because you can come in as a producer, but you don't start being a producer. You have to start from the bottom, learn the industry, work your way all the way up. So for my young ladies who want to be producers, you know what? Go in there. It's a pity now it's COVID time, so you can't go to any set and ask to be a runner, ask to be whatever, to help around the set, because you have to really learn your way down all the way up and understand how the systems work. Because each broadcaster, for instance, if it's a commission, each broadcaster has got a system of how they work. SABC has got a different system, totally different system to Mnet. Mnet has got a totally different system and formula to how Netflix is doing things at the moment, to how Showmax is doing things. So at first it's learning and identifying where you want to be and learning the formula of, you know, that channel that you want to follow.
Yeah. Ketiwe, one of the other questions that I had seen on the chat was, do you think there's an appetite for documentaries in South African mainstream television? And I heard you saying that you were actually directing a documentary right now.
Yeah. I mean, I love, you know, these are the things, I love drama and fiction. But when I'm at home and when I'm watching content that I really want to watch, I watch about the real world. I watch about real people. I watch about real things. So I think there is a real space for documentary. I think that documentaries got so much more interesting in the last 5 to 10 years in the way in which people are thinking about telling those documentary stories, about revealing real lives. And I think that in a way, when we look at reality TV, which is a construct and it's not real, right? What we're seeing is the appetite for real lives, right? And the appetite that people see for real life. So I think that there's a real space for us to produce great documentary content, which reflects who we are. So yeah, so I think there's room and there's space, and I love it. I watch it. I'm a bit obsessed by it.
So I'm gonna answer because I'm also part of this roundtable conversation. And I was thinking about how to possibly avoid the why am I still here, you know? with this abusive industry that we're in. I think you guys answered for me all those reasons. Understanding the power of moving images, how in the modern age it is a form of archiving and recording what is going on in our lives, be it scripted or be it factual. And it has the power to reach a lot more people, especially now with the advent of internet, than any other form. Especially if you are watching how publications are falling and becoming digitized, and this particular industry, what has happened is that it has grown. More platforms are created for it than it has diminished. Even the way we're making it, so it's no longer, Ketue, what you were doing when you were editing, which was cutting film and pasting it, literally cutting and pasting. We are evolving. This particular medium is evolving with as we go into, they talk about the fourth industrial revolution. We're right there. Content creation and moving images has become even more important, and the space is even more equalized because everybody has the modem, that has the mode to create content. And so I guess that's why I'm here. I'm very interested in all these various platforms and different ways of creating content. And that weirdly is as a result of finding it so difficult to operate in the system. And so I'm excited about being forced to go virtual because of COVID, because that has demonstrated to us again how else we can engage with the world and create our own platforms and engage with the world without necessarily needing the traditional platforms like our broadcasters. In also listening to you guys, I've thought about the things that I think we have assumed to be true, but we can begin to break down and change about whether we're a movie-going audience or maybe whether it's the content that we're creating, or that the films that are being pushed on the market are not the films that they want to watch because they are not reflected, literally. Yeah. The other thing is the idea that our audience is the 56 million people in this country rather than the entire continent or the diaspora. I don't believe in any of those things. I don't believe that language is a barrier because of how many other things that I watch, whether it's subtitled or dubbed or whatever, that I engage in and am invested in spite of this fact. So Ketue was talking very much about distributors and how she keeps saying you need to watch them because they will tell you things like that. Your content won't travel here, nobody's going to watch it and all of that. And we as the content creators, as hard as it is already, being that that term producer is a catch-all for everything, have to begin to engage everybody about how else we can begin to do this. And I'm talking to us here at this round table. It's not going to change unless we say it has to change and change in this particular way, or force people to see or to be open to new ways of doing things. And that's the hard part. And the reason why, Ketue, some producers might be signing those contracts that you're saying they shouldn't sign is because it's a status quo. It's how people have been doing it. It's not because they agree and they think, oh, this is fantastic. Yes, I will go into production in 2 months. It's because everybody's signing it, and it is maybe.
Yeah, and if I refuse, you'll say yes, right? So it's not like if I refuse, the thing changes. So also it's just about us coming together and deciding, as you were saying, I think, Ketue earlier, that like, we need to band together and decide, like, because what is a broadcaster if all the producers are no longer willing to sign? Then they'll have to come to the table and start rethinking some of those clauses that are problematic and all of that. But it only works if we're united. Because if we're not, I say no, the next person's like, all right, I'll do it 2 months. I'll do it in a month and a half.
Yeah. Google, you were talking about just now, what happened in the UK in terms of when they changed the terms of trade with broadcasters, right? Okay. changing the terms of trade. The IPO and IBFC are currently writing up a new, working with a legal person so that we can engineer the terms of trade in South Africa. We have to talk to ICASA, have to renegotiate with ICASA. ICASA is in a very difficult situation because they are the middleman, and they're the middleman between the broadcasters, the producers, and the consumer. So they have all these roles they must play. But we have to start saying that there has to be a balance in the relationship between broadcasters and producers, because it's no longer that producers are king. We have power too. So we have to understand, and the only way we're going to understand that we have power is when we actually work together, when we actually see each other as if we start to, you know what, when things changed in the American industry for reality television was when the drama people went on strike. They went on strike, and these people banded together and said, we're going to produce reality quickly and cheaply. But what happened with the drama people, they came back full of force and had better terms of trade, better ways of working, and they got much better deals out of the. So we have to understand that if I'm short-termism and I look at myself and say, this is how long it's going to take me to make it, and I just think about me, you're going to, because guess what? That banana peel is still there in front of you. And guess what? No doubt, my sisters, all of us have and will slip on the banana peel, right? So
it's
if
not
we take the banana peel out of the action, then we are a stronger group who won't have to trip on the banana peel.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I would say, and as we are closing off, and I think Katie was already basically putting that statement out as in, this is what could be done better and what is already being done through the organizations that she mentioned to make sure that it's not just a matter of we want to own the IP. It is to engage the stakeholders who can change that fact, and also what we do once we have that IP. So for me, the premise of this conversation, just a lack of ownership. It's not just the lack of ownership, but it is what avenues does a person have to exploit this IP once they have it? And what are those avenues? Are those roads even tarred yet? Do those roads even exist? Snini, going forward, what would you like to see happen and change in the event? Since I feel like we're moving that way, that producers are given the opportunity to own more of the IP, and what should we be putting in place to facilitate the exploitation on this very IP, this holy grail?
Mainly, it's just the understanding. Gugu mentioned a very interesting point about as producers, do we have the right business? Is it business scope or the understanding of our module, the understanding of our business as well? To say, okay, if I own this product, what value is it? So my value, does it equate to all the other people that have the same product that I have? Because if we don't understand the value of what we have, then how do you sell it? How would you know the buyers of this product? So we need to identify who is our taker and how do I reach my takers of my product. If I work with writers, for instance, I need to know how much do I give them and when do I give them. If I've got stakeholders, as someone mentioned now, when I sell the product, will they understand that I will give them their money only after I've paid everybody? Will they understand that? So firstly, it's just the understanding of me owning this product, what it entails, and where can I sell it? And also, Ketua mentioned distributors, marketing, and all those things. We did not explore mostly about marketing, which is also another avenue. Because I can have this product, but how do I market it? She spoke about toothpaste. How do I advertise my toothpaste? How do I get my toothpaste out there? So also marketing plays like a big role, but us as producers, I know nothing about marketing. So now, which means on my budget line, I need now to put marketing, I need now to put distribution and all those things. So I can own my product, but I want to know what to do with it. Because I can go maybe to someone and say, Google, please give me R1 million. I want to do a short film. I can shoot that short film. I own it, but what do I do with it? Where will I take?
So basically there's a knowledge gap, and Google, I'm coming to you now to also just how else we can do this. From what I'm getting and what I'm also experiencing, and I guess that's part of your conversations, Ketue, at the IPO and IBFC, is there's a knowledge gap right now about what to do with IP, not just getting it, because we're definitely moving there. If the SABC is having problems in funding their projects as they have been for a while, and it will make no sense but to engage the various funding, which is one thing I forgot for us to really, really delve in, is like, what are the real funding opportunities in South Africa? And moving beyond the borders, that's another story altogether. But say we are now talking about sharing IP and there's co-ownership and investment. There's a knowledge gap. And you mentioned that, Ketue, that you will need lawyers who understand how to write these contracts that are specific to those. There's a knowledge gap now. There's a skills gap that's appearing about those people, because I really don't want to put it on producers as a producer to once again know how to exploit this project. I want somebody who can sit with me and assist me. I remember sitting down with a producer in DC, which happens to be where the Discovery headquarters are, and they, now they own a whole lot of channels, TLC, they own all sorts of things. And this woman said, we just make shows on sharks. And I was like, really? And she's like, that's all we do. We have now created equipment that is the best equipment to shoot sharks. And she's like, I'm in South Africa all the time. She's like, but because we go into these deals where I deliver to Discovery what I want, what they want, they only get those 45 minutes that they've paid for. Everything else that I own, that I've shot, I own. And that then goes to whatever stock photography site, that goes to a spin-off show that I'm creating, that goes to whatever. She's like, there's so many things we're doing with what we don't use because they only paid for those 40 minutes. To understand content creation in that way, you need to be able to see the various ways that you can go. And right now, you get your IP, but then where do you go from there? And so it's important that this skills gap, this knowledge gap in between of people that are in the know, these lawyers that need to come in, or whoever else, the distributors understanding this space a little better is, I think, what we need in the future. Google, what is your take on how else we can do this?
Look, I think you raised a very important point, and you scared me earlier when you were talking about Jovijo and the lack of being able to sort of exploit it further and whatever, because we are looking at you guys and thinking that's where we need to get, you know what I mean? We need to make our own stuff.
This is why we need to be talking.
Do you know what I mean? And then and so it's scary to feel like the promised land has these many problems as well, you know, has that many problems as well. But when you talk about this knowledge gap, I think even if you think about, I think about my education, even after, they'll take you, you know, from conception of idea to the last little step of post-production. But then there is no real education around distribution, around properly marketing, this and that. So it's like they teach us how to make the product, but how do we exploit the product? I think that is a big knowledge gap for us. I think that there is opportunity from sort of educational phase, like stages, all the way up for us to just learn more and know more, so that once we get to the promised land of IP and owning our stuff, we don't look back and think, hey, Egypt was kind of nice, so what are we doing out here? It wasn't as nice as what we thought it was going to be. So yeah, I think we do need to look at that as a matter of urgency, because IP is where we're going and what we want.
Don't be discouraged. All it's
required. No, I'm not discouraged. Yes. I'm not discouraged. Okay. I think it's new information, and it's like, okay, cool. But then it's like there's a challenge that we need to deal with. But I'm definitely not discouraged. I think you guys are on the right track and further ahead. You know, and we, as long as you can signpost and we can say, hey, what do we do now?
This way.
You guys went there before. Yeah.
Go slower, slow down.
Yeah. Then I think we'll do well.
I think sorry.
No, go.
No, you were finish.
So just, I mean, the last thing is it's what the discussion is about. I think it's just like, can producers just get their IP? And I think the more that we understand it, I think sometimes I struggle with humans when we don't, and I guess, I mean, I'm a storyteller, so I should know, but when we don't respond to things that make sense, it's difficult because it makes sense. The BBC didn't lose money when they gave IP to producers. They made exponentially more. So we're not asking for something that's a charity, something that's I guess we can do it. If you're a corporation and you're not driven by money, I don't know how to interact with you. I don't know what else. And then that's where it starts scaring me, because I'm like, if you're not driven by money, then what is it actually? What is making us make these decisions that don't make sense for us, don't make sense for you? And like, what are we trying to get out of it? So I think when the broadcasters start realizing that they stand to make so much more if they were to just loosen up this IP conversation, their businesses will make more sense. Their profitability will shoot through the roof. So will ours. It's not an us against them situation. We're together in this thing, and we're not appealing from just the goodness of your hearts. My appeal is, don't you want to make more money? A lot more money? Like,
what about your bottom line? Your bottom line will benefit. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Ketiwe?
From the producer side, and I think what we need to do is to understand that we are in a value chain, right? And that there are players at each process point in the value chain. And as a producer, you can't, well, I'm not even sure if I'm saying the right thing, but you can't be vertically integrated in yourself, right? You have to find ways of finding the relationships that enable you to deliver all the aspects that you need to deliver, while you focus on the key aspect that you're really great at, which is creating content, right? That's what we're really great at. That's what we love. What we get frustrated about is the other pieces that are in that matrix, right? So we have to understand that. So we have to start to say, okay, I know this lawyer, right? She needs to be sustained. If five female Black companies work together and sustain that lawyer, that means that I have somewhere to go to, and that lawyer has work. I need a distributor. If 5 of us are producing content and there's content, and then we say, we will all supply you with the distribution. We will negotiate at the beginning about the contracts that we're going to write. You go out there and sell it. That person goes out and sell it. There's somebody who went and did marketing and loves selling and is a great salesperson. We say to them, here are these companies, you go and you do the selling. But what we do is we say, oh, I've got to be a lawyer, I've got to be a distributor, I've got to be this, and then we get exhausted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we need to do is find ways of making ourselves an industry in our value chain.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to be an industry in ourselves.
And I think we're saying the same thing, Ketiwe, when I say that value chain, we need more people to join us on that value chain. Yeah. And I think I speak for all of us when I say the general call from us at this roundtable is that IP, we should now be at the point where we're past the IP issue. We're now talking about what we do with the IP. Yeah. And hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later. And I want to thank you, ladies. I want to thank the GFC and Tabeleng, Osmic, everybody behind the scenes. I think this has been a candid conversation and an honest one where we are not masters, but also learning as a producer. So, and I hope the people that have participated will join tomorrow's session as well. So thank you very much. And good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, everybody.
Thanks very much, Lodi. That was really, really well put together and held.
Yeah, happy Women's Month.
Absolutely.
Happy Women's Month, ladies.
Thank you. Happy Women's Month.
Bye.
sonke isicelo sifaka umuntu omdala ngesonke bese ikomiti yahlangana yabona. Uma bevumelana kutholakala inkabi bese ithintwa ngocingo yabona. Uthulitha unikeza inkabi imfanelo zayo. Uma isiqedile iyageza.
Mama waphatha amandla ukufa nokuphila ezandleni zakho. Ubona umphefumulo womuntu uhluka nenyama yakhe kwaqa amehla bheka phezulu.
Umsebenzi wami uqhubeka.
Hey, your shoelaces are done.
Sorry, shoelaces, young. Please, Sissy, I'm watching.
I don't want
Oh,
it.
Wally! Oh, Wally!
Friend, he was just trying to be helpful.
You're gonna have to go. What's wrong with your hand?
It's kunomuntu la endlini na.
What do you mean?
Good morning, Zinhle.
Good morning,
You look beautiful today. Let me get you some breakfast.
Maybe an apple?
No,
Yeah, I think,
really,
yeah,
British,
fruits in
I'm
the morning.
okay.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Hey, Z! Oh, hey!
What are you going to do with my number?
I am going to call you.
Oh, you're such a romantic.
You're the one, yes.
Marry this girl.
No, God, Ma. You know how I feel about marriage.
You don't deserve me.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Baby, nikwenze njani na? Wena, balance me. Do you just walk around with rings in your pocket?
I've learned my lesson. I love you.
You can choose a man who actually makes you happy. You have options.
I promise you, love lives here.
Go diragalang ga o fetša bophelo ka moka o lelekiša torete manaba a gago a le morago ga gago pele o nagana toro ya gago e nyelele o tla dira eng Papa Marumo! Jovito! Jovito! E wena o tla tala na